We've all seen stories about generative AI assistants hallucinating and sending outlandish or inappropriate responses to users' questions, and it's probably obvious to all of us why we wouldn't want an assistant representing our brand to behave that way. Well, there's also another more common and slightly less obvious category of hallucinations that CX leaders should also be concerned about. Hi, I'm Max Fortis, a product manager here at Quiq, and before we dive in any further, it's important to know that contrary to popular belief, preventing these types of hallucinations is possible, and customers who choose Quiq don't have to worry about either of these situations happening with their assistant. Let's take a look at a few different hallucination examples, and then we'll explore how Quiq prevents them and helps CX leaders protect their brand's reputation and deliver accurate answers to their customers. First, let's see what happens when a customer asks a question that is simply outside of the scope of what we want our assistant talking about. All the examples we're going to be looking at today are going to be in the context of a fictional bicycle retailer, Quicksilver Bikes. First, we'll see what an inappropriate or incorrect response looks like. Then we'll see how we'd use Quiq's AI Studio to prevent this from happening in a production deployment. So, in this first example, we can get the assistant to answer a question totally unrelated to our brand, and also do it in a voice that doesn't match our brand either. Probably obvious to all of us why Quicksilver Bikes wouldn't want their assistant answering questions about who the 25th president was and doing it like a pirate. Now, let's take a look at an example that falls under that other, often more common category of hallucinations. And these type of hallucinations can occur when a user asks a question that is within the scope of what we want our assistant to handle, but it struggles to respond effectively either because the user's question is too vague or it doesn't have the right knowledge to draw from to actually answer that question, which is what's going to be happening here. So in this case, I'm asking a specific question about a return policy for bikes stolen in transit, and the assistant's going to go ahead and tell me that that's not covered. This all seems okay. However, our knowledge base actually doesn't mention this scenario one way or another. So the assistant has effectively hallucinated and created a policy out of thin air. You can imagine why that'd be damaging for Quicksilver Bikes as a brand and frustrating for me as a consumer when I maybe learn that this policy doesn't actually exist and isn't true. So let's see how we prevent these hallucinations using Quiq's AI Studio. This is AI Studio we're looking at here, where all of our customers' conversations are orchestrated, built either by your conversational design team or Quiq's, whichever you prefer. As you can see, we'll be sending in those same questions on the right-hand side, and on the left, you'll see the orchestration layer that's going to control the flow of the conversation and provide the framework for how the assistant should respond to user questions as they come in. This framework is going to guide users down a specific path that's going to enable the assistant to gather the information that the large language model or LLM is going to need to give customers the right answer. It's also important to understand that the LLMs used in your Quiq assistant will respond to questions only from pre-approved sources provided by you, like your knowledge base, your product catalog, and not from the general data set they were trained on. This is a process known as Retrieval Augmented Generation, or RAG, and it's a key ingredient in preventing hallucinations. Now, let's take a look at what happens under the hood in AI Studio that prevents Quiq's AI assistants from hallucinating like the examples we just saw. So let's ask Quiq's assistant to talk like a pirate and tell us the 25th US president. As you can see here, we're actually using LLMs and business logic to examine the user question before the assistant even attempts to generate an answer. So we're doing things like looking at the topic of the question, whether it's sensitive, whether it's in or out of scope, and then determining where the conversation should go. So strange requests like this are going to go straight up to our out of scope response we've got set up before the assistant even attempts to generate an answer from our knowledge base. Now let's move on to that second example. Remember that in this scenario, the user's question is relevant to what we want our AI assistant to be able to handle, so it passes the initial guardrails and moves to the next step in our flow here. You can see we're using multiple different steps to search our knowledge base, generate an answer, check the claims that the answer is coming from, check the tone of the answer, and then double check that the claims we're making are actually corroborated by the articles the assistant is referencing. Every step here is going to be run independently from one another and serves as a check on the previous step. So our answer must pass every step here before it's actually going to get sent to a user. In this case, it ends with the assistant actually not being able to provide enough evidence for the claim it's trying to make. So the customer is going to get sent general information on returns and then the ability to speak to an agent. This is much better than making up a new policy on the spot, and the reality is you're probably not going to have content to answer every single type of question that your assistant's going to receive, and it's really important to have safeguards in place for when this does inevitably happen. There's also another common scenario where the user's request is going to be once again in scope, but it may be too vague for the assistant to answer without some follow-ups. So let's imagine I asked a general question about returns, and the assistant generates an answer based on the online return policy when I really bought my item in store, and the two policies differ from one another. So in this example, we can see the assistant is not going to generate an answer until it collects all the information it needs. So it's going to ask me what type of product, then it's going to go ahead and ask me where I bought it, and only then, with all that information it needs to answer, is it going to search our knowledge base or our approved data sets to try and generate an answer. At Quiq, we really understand how damaging hallucinations can be to your business and to your customers, and hopefully you've got a better understanding now of the different types of hallucinations. We reviewed out-of-scope questions, where an assistant is answering questions that really aren't in scope for what we want our assistant to be answering. We also reviewed hallucinations related to in-scope questions, where an assistant can provide incorrect or inaccurate information to user questions. So using Quiq's AI Studio, you're able to ensure your assistant is only generating answers from brand-approved sources approved by you, only responding to user questions that are actually in scope, and only generating answers when it's confident it has the information required to actually provide an accurate answer that's supported by the information it has access to. So now hopefully you understand a bit more about some of the biggest concerns CX leaders have about using a generative AI assistant. Most people will tell you that preventing hallucinations is impossible, but as you just saw, with the right process and tooling in place, you can help prevent hallucinations in your experience. Please check out our website and schedule some time to talk with us if you'd like to learn more about what Quiq can do for your business.